हेलो मैम। मैम वो ना रेशमा मैम की लाइन पे है बढ़िया मैम, मैं मर्ज करना है कॉल। रेशमा मैम भी ना लाइन पे है, मैं कॉल मर्ज कर रही हूँ। ठीक है, हाँ हाँ यस। हेलो। हाँ जी मैम, मैम कंचन मैम भी है। मैम जो 24 वाले पेपर्स हैं वो सारे मैं जो डेटा। हेलो कंचन मैम, आपको आवाज़ आ रही है?
हाँ जी।
हाँ जी हाँ जी। सर इस वाले में बोल क्या है ना। हेलो
हेलो।
मैम, हमको शायद आवाज़ नहीं जा रही है, नेटवर्क का कोई इशू ना हो। हाँ जी चलिए चलिए।
Hello, good morning sir, Vimdesh here sir.
गुड मॉर्निंग।
कैसे हैं सर आप?
एबल टू हियर मी? हेलो।
सर गुड मॉर्निंग।
गुड मॉर्निंग बेटा। एबल टू हियर मी?
हेलो
सर आपकी आवाज़ थोड़ी क्लियर नहीं आ रही सर।
हेलो
जस्ट अ
कंचन मैम,
सेकंड।
आपको आवाज़ आ रही है?
जस्ट अ सेकंड।
हाँ जी मैम, हाँ जी।
हेलो।
Yes sir.
एबल टू हियर मी?
Yes sir.
ओके। हाउ मेनी पार्टिसिपेंट्स
पानी
आर
भी हो
देयर?
जाएगा ना सर, यहाँ से जब वहाँ पे सारा साफ जब कर दें।
So total there are 40 participants sir, but they are still joining.
ओके।
But our expert is also ready. He will be join at scheduled time sir. Okay sir.
हम डेटा साइंस वाले तो किसी के भी नहीं है, करने ही पड़ेंगे हमें। हाँ जी हाँ जी हाँ जी, मैं कॉलेज में हूँ। हाँ जी हाँ जी, मैं देखती हूँ कि कौन है नीचे, अभी तक तो कोई आया नहीं है। मैं करवा लेती हूँ, आज मैं पोर्टल का ही काम करूँगी, पोर्टल पे करके उन बच्चों को भी ऐड कर दूँगी और उनके जो पेपर्स हैं वो भी अपलोड कर दूँगी। हाँ जी हाँ जी हाँ जी। ठीक है। हाँ जी हाँ जी, ऐसा करते हैं, एक जने के पोर्टल पे सारे डिप्लोमा वाले बच्चे कर देते हैं और एक जने के पोर्टल पे सारे बीवॉक वाले कर देते हैं। हाँ जी हाँ जी हाँ जी। जैसे एक जना डिप्लोमा। हाँ जी, वो तो डिप्लोमा पीजी डिप्लोमा के मैं एक पोर्टल पे कर लेती हूँ और बीवॉक के चारों पे एक पोर्टल पे कर देती हूँ, ताकि एक जने के पास सारा बीवॉक का रिकॉर्ड हो जाएगा और एक के पास डिप्लोमा और पीजी डिप्लोमा का हो जाएगा।
वॉल्यूम की जगह तो एलिमेंट्री एरिया का
Alexa hasn't joined now, right? The expert hasn't joined till now. Do we have his phone number?
A very good morning to everyone. Our honorable speaker of the session, Professor PM Pathak ji from IIT Guwahati has joined the session. I request Dr. Mukesh Gupta sir, please start the session.
Professor Pathak, good morning.
Good morning.
ठीक उसी की एक
Uh, Sir, it's an honor to have you here with us. So, the participants, I would just like to provide you with a brief introduction of our esteemed expert for this session. We have with us Professor P.M. Pathak, who is currently working as professor at IIT Roorkee. Professor Pathak obtained his PhD from IIT Kharagpur in the year 2005 in the field of space robotics. Prior to that, he did his master's from IIT Kanpur in solid mechanics and design and his BTech in mechanical engineering from NIT Calicut. Professor Pathak has an overall teaching experience of almost 20 years, and prior to that, he also served in the industry for a period of almost 5 years. During his tenure as a faculty member, he has earned numerous number of awards and prizes. And he is also a reviewer for some of the most esteemed journals in the area of robotics. He has also reviewed various books and has been involved in various editorial activities. He has also conducted one MOOCs NPTEL course on modeling and simulation of dynamic systems. He is a member of various international and national advisory bodies and also a member of different professional bodies. So far, he has successfully supervised 10 PhD degrees and currently has another 8 which are ongoing. And apart from that, he has also guided 40 MTech dissertations and 2 are ongoing. So it's a real honor and pleasure for us to have such an esteemed academician amongst us as a speaker for this session. And I hope that you will be able to take the maximum out of what Professor Pathak has to offer. Good morning, sir, once again, and I welcome you to the session for this particular STP. And the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you for a nice introduction. And I'm not able to see a screen. Should I start directly sharing my
So you can,
screen?
so you have been made the co-host, you can share your screen.
Okay. So are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
PPT now?
Yes, sir. We are able to see.
Okay. So good morning, you all, and here today I'm going to talk about the bionic manipulators. Currently, 3 PhD students are working with me on this particular topic. But I would like to give you a brief background and basics of it rather than talking about the PhD level problem over here. As the name bionic implies, basically it means that mimicking some of the animals, birds in nature, and by mimicking that, say if I talk about elephant, okay, as you can see it in my title slide, elephant trunk is very powerful. Okay, it can take a very large amount of load with the help of that trunk. Okay, so people thought of it, and then they thought of maybe we can make something like a trunk which could take a large amount of load. Okay, then the question is that in elephant, this trunk basically they are the muscles, and muscles are being actuated. Then question arises in case of if we are going to mimic how to actuate the trunk. Okay, so again, I'll be talking about various ways of doing it and how people have done it. So here, as you can see that there could be the two ways of actuation. Either pneumatically it could be done, the actuation, or through wires, the actuation could be done. Okay, but the wires has got a little problem in the sense that they can take load only in the one direction, that is tension, not compression. Okay, so with this brief, first before I begin, I would like to acknowledge my students and collaborator who have contributed in what I'm going to present today. And in fact, it was part of our DST India, a DST sponsored project on collaboration between India and France. Okay, so you can see some of my French colleagues are there and some of the French students are there. Okay, this is how my presentation will go. Introduction, and as I said, I want to keep the topic to not much higher level. So I'll be talking about state of art and then forward kinematics and kinematic calibration and the conclusions. So a robot, as we have seen in our daily life, okay, they are usually the hard robot. Hard robot means the links are rigid. So the robot can be classified as hard or soft on the basis of the compliance of their underlying material. Okay. So if you look at the figure here, you can see we have a hard robot, and these hard robot again have a subgroup, what we call it as the discrete one, and here you have the non-redundant and redundant. Okay, non-redundant basically, or rather redundant, let me explain you, then you'll be able to understand non-redundant automatically. Redundant basically means that something extra, okay, as its dictionary meaning tells. Fine. Now the question is, what is redundant robot? Okay. Now see, if we want to manipulate an object in space, okay, we require at least 6 degrees of freedom. All right, 6 degrees of freedom. What I mean is that the 3 positions and the 3 orientations. Okay, these positions are basically the X, Y, Z coordinates for the, say, I have an object. So I can have the location of the CG of the object, so the 3 x, y, z coordinates, and the 3 orientations of the object. Okay, so the orientation, I mean, what is say rotation about x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. So these 6 degrees of freedom any object in space has. So if you want a manipulator to place this object at any position and in any orientation, your robot should also have those many degrees of freedom, that is 6 degrees of freedom. So if the robot which you have, it has a number of degrees of freedom more than 6, okay, then what we call it as the robot as the redundant robot. All right, and those who are having less than or 6 degrees of freedom and less, that those are called non-redundant robot, or rather, to be precise, in this definition, if your manipulator degrees of freedom are more than the degrees of freedom required for the object to handle, then what we call it as the redundant robot. All right. It's a general definition. I gave you 6, but suppose something what you can say, that a car which is moving, okay, it has got 3 degrees of freedom. Say if it's moving on a plane surface, so the 2 degrees of freedom for the position, that is XY position of the CG, and the 3rd degree of freedom is about its orientation. Okay, how it is located about, say, about its rotation about z-axis. So if it's degrees of freedom, so car has got 3 degrees of freedom. So any robot having more than 3 degrees of freedom and which is, say, manipulating that car, then we can say that it's a redundant manipulator. Okay, now after redundant, if you have the large degree of freedom, even that is large degree of redundancy, that is what we call it as the hyper redundant. And again, in hyper redundant category, you have the continuous manipulator. Okay, and in continuum manipulator, again we can have a subcategory which we call it as the soft manipulator. So here is the how we proceed from discrete to continuum manipulator. So discrete, you can see that it has got the, say, finite number of degrees of freedom. Okay. So here you can see, say, 1 degree and 2 degrees of freedom manipulator this is, and the various positions are shown. Then you have the serpentine one, where you can have again large degree of freedom. So here 2, so here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, say. Okay, and if you keep on increasing your degrees of freedom, then say you reach here to a category what we call it as the continuum manipulator. That is one which is having very large degree of freedom. So a soft robot is inherently compliant and exhibit large strains in the normal operation itself. Okay, and as I just gave you an example, the commonly used hard robots are non-redundant because they are non-redundants are used in the normal operation, because redundancy actually creates a problem in control. Okay, if you have a redundant robot, although we have got some advantages of that, it is redundant basically means that you have something extra. Okay, so that extra has got advantage many times, especially if some of the links fail or some of the joint fails, then you can reconfigure that extra degree of freedom. Okay, and you can get the job done. So that advantage you have, but as I said, from the control perspective, there are difficulties in controlling such a robot. Okay, so the most commonly used hard robots are common, kinematically non-redundant, and they have a well-defined environment in which they repeatedly perform the given task with a very great precision. Okay, and you know, these hard robots are designed to be stiff, stiff, so that vibration and deformation of structure and the drive train. Okay, drive train, I mean that transmission used to transmit power from actuator up to the joint. Okay, that is the drive train. They do not reduce the accuracy of the movement. Hard robots are hyper redundant when the number of joints are very large. Okay, and hyper redundant robots have potential to work in unstructured environment and provide high dexterity. So as I said, we can use the extra degree of freedom to our advantage when your robot is working in the unstructured environment. Okay, so these are the hyper redundant robots, and by the nature, the soft robots and traditional hard robots use different mechanism to enable dexterous mobility for the robots. So if we look at the capabilities of hard and soft robot, okay, so here if we look at say the first figure, can you see my cursor? Anyone, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So suppose you have a hard robot here, all right, and say this is one link, first link, second link, and third link with say a gripper. Now, if there is an obstacle, okay, and if suppose your robot is performing some motion and it so happens that you cannot say give the joint a specific rotation so that it does not hit this obstacle. So it is going to hit the obstacle this way, okay, here. But in case of soft robot, okay, you can see that your robot can be deformed in this way so that it is able to avoid the obstacle. So that is what we call it as the dexterity. Okay, so this soft robot is more dexterous compared to the hard robot. Now, there are problems also. It is not so that it is always simple or things are always at our advantage. If you look at the second figure, figure B, now this hard robot has say first joint has got rotation θ1, second θ2, and third θ3. Now, how do we measure this joint? And the tip, say, position is X, Y, Z. Okay. Now, so for measuring of these joint, or what we call it as the position sensing, okay, that is, we are interested in finding out this X, Y, Z coordinate of the tip with respect to, of course, there is a reference frame, we can assume a reference frame or base frame here at this position. Now then, with respect to this base frame, we can measure always XYZ coordinate. So this could be, say, L1 cos theta 1 plus L2 cos theta 2 plus L3 cos theta 3. X1, likewise, I can have Y and Z coordinate. So if I want to measure this XYZ position, I need to know these joint angles, theta 1, theta 2, and theta 3. All right. So the measurement of joint is very simple. We can use a potentiometer, or these robots, they are equipped with joint rotation sensors such as encoders. So if it's a very small robot, then usually one can go for the potentiometer, but it's a bigger robot and with precision, one goes with the encoders. Okay, so with the help of those encoders, we can always measure this joint angle and we can get the XYZ coordinate. Now, if we look at the soft robot, now in this case of soft robot, how do we measure this XYZ coordinate? Okay, so XYZ coordinate as a function of say here it was as a function of theta, that is joint angle, but here we make it function of what? There are no joints here in case of continuous manipulator or soft manipulator. Okay, so what is done is that usually people measure these lengths basically. Okay, how much are these length? All right, and again the measurement of these length, unlike the hard one where it's a very simple measurement of the length of the rigid link, the measurement of length in case of soft manipulator is difficult. So what people do is that they use the potentiometer, linear potentiometer over here, and then they try to measure these length. And once they measure these length, then what rotations, what angles they are forming with some center of curvature, okay, and how much they are rotated with respect to the vertical axis. Based on those two angles, they try to find out XYZ coordinate. We'll be seeing one such case in the coming slides. Okay, so this is the drawback of your continuous manipulator, soft manipulator or bionic manipulator. Okay, that is the position sensing is difficult. All right, then if we talk about manipulation, okay, in manipulation, you can see that, okay, the gripper can take a load. Manipulation again has got some advantage. Here, it can take a load at the end effector, whereas if the continuous robot has to take a load, naturally it has to deform and then it has to grip the object. Okay, then if we talk about loading, okay, if a hard manipulator is loaded or end effector is having certain amount of load, then there is going to be some deformation in the deformation, or because of the weight of this one, there is going to be movement of the links in the downward direction, as you can see here. Okay, but this movement is large in case of the soft manipulator, as you can see in this figure, because of loading. Okay, so we have seen that there are two advantages. One is that they are more dexterous, the soft one, and they can easily manipulate the object, maybe with a greater load. But the position sensing is difficult, and the deformation because of the weight also is more in case of the bionic manipulator. So soft robots have distributed deformation, with theoretically an infinite number of degrees of freedom. So if something is continuous, you know that each point position has to be defined basically. Okay, so that is why we call it as having an infinite number of degrees of freedom. Okay, so this leads to a hyper redundant configuration space where robot tip can attain every point in three-dimensional workspace with an infinite number of robot shape and configuration. Okay, but the soft robot have one additional advantage over hard robot is that they generate little resistance to compressive forces basically. Okay, and therefore they can conform to obstacle, and they can also carry soft and fragile payload without causing damage because they are soft in nature. Okay, they do not give resistance to the compressive forces. So that is the advantage of it. The actuators of soft robots are typically integrated into and distributed throughout the structure. Okay, as I said in my first slide that either they are actuated pneumatically or they are having the wire actuation. Okay, so often the actuator make up most of the structure in case of soft robots. Okay, and soft robots falls into a class of system that are termed under actuated robot because unlike hard robots, there is not an actuator for every degrees of freedom. Okay, and other degrees of freedom may be influenced by actuators, but many degrees of freedom are not controllable. So this is the one, and as I said, sensing and controlling the shape of the soft robot is always a challenge. Okay, and since their structure is continuum, the exact measurement of shape and tip position is difficult. I think I discussed this point already about the joint rotation. Joint position can be processed, and I think you have been going through. I saw the schedule of various lectures in this program, and you must have gone through some of the basic lecture on robotics. So I hope you are aware of what we mean by the forward kinematics, which is finding out of the tip position and orientation for the given joint rotation. That is what we call it as the forward kinematics. And the inverse kinematic is basically if you are given the tip position and orientation, so what are the joint angles basically? So that is what we call it as the inverse kinematic. Now, the joint positions measured by the encoders are compared with the desired joint position calculated from the inverse kinematics, and the actuator then leads to the servo error to 0. So this is what is done actually in the conventional robotics when you want to control the robot. Now, soft robot interacts with environment differently from their hard counterpart. Gravity and contact loading cause continuous deformation in the soft robot that may not be observable or controllable from the limited sensor or actuator respectively. And as I said, I discussed this is one of the problem. But again, the advantage is that the soft robot can locomote by using a variety of gates with a large portion of their structure in ground contact at any instant of time. Okay, so if I talk about say snake robot, okay, a snake. All right, the snake robot, sorry, the snakes are also, or a snake robot which can be mimicked by mimicking a snake. That's also a continuum structure, okay, or continuum shape is there, and it's a large portion of their structure is in ground contact at any instant of time. So here I've taken two examples of the soft robot. As is the first one, which I talked in my first slide, that is the elephant trunk, and other could be the tongue also. You can see the shape of the tongue. Okay, in this figure, say the shape of the tongue of a dog. You can see how it is seen, how it has deformed basically. Okay, now this deformation has come because of a definite way of actuating the different portions of the tongue. Okay, so these two are a very good example of the uh, bionic manipulator or continuum manipulator. Now, let us look at a little about the state of art, how different people have explored the different aspect of the bionic manipulator to design the different type of robots. So, if we talk about bionic, so first of all, what we do is, suppose this is the object and we want to grip it with the help of our hand. Okay, so what we are doing is basically we are trying to do a biological grasping. All right. Now, after biological grasping at the biological level, we do the mechanical analysis of biological grasping. Then, with the help of physics and mathematics, we try to model the grasping task. Okay, how could this be grasped? So, something like this. Uh, and then at the engineering level, we design a grasping a robot arm. Okay, so this one, the red arrows, you can see that the mobile manipulator robot for the human assistance, and this one is what we do research in the bionic field, and with the help of that, we try to grasp the object like this. Now, bionic have several applications, several application domains, say humanoid, okay, then animal-like robots are there, explore unknown, which can be used to explore unknown planet, task in a hazardous environment, or they could be the home robots or toy robots or artistic robots and so on. Okay, so the first figure is a bird basically, which has been designed by, there are many people working, but Festo, there is a company who deal with bionic, different type of bionic manipulator in Germany. So they have designed a bird like this. Now, coming to the mobility aspect or mobility issue, the mobility we can explain with the help of the degree of mobility, degree of steerability, degree of maneuverability, degrees of freedom, and redundancy or hyper redundancy. Now, if we look at, say, the terrestrial mobile robots, okay, now the terrestrial mobile robots, terrestrial means something which is on the land, basically, okay. So the terrestrial mobile robot, again, could have in general, we know about the wheeled robots. Okay, yeah, everybody knows these type of robots are very common. So they could be either wheeled one, or they could be either tank type of structure. Then, if we come to the legged robot, okay, then legged robot can have motion like, say, walking, running, or jumping. Okay, so your legged robot could be of these three types. So if we take example of walking, so we can say talk about the humanoids robot. One of the example is the now robot, okay, like this. Or if you talk about running one, so then a biped robot, that is a Mabel robot, something like this, okay. And if we talk about jumping, then it could be jumping biped leg robot like this one, okay, who jumps on the base. Now, if we talk about the continuum category, so first category we have seen wheel, then we have seen legged one, and then you have the continuum robot category. Now, in continuum robot category, we have the snake-like undulations, basically, or the snake robot. So here you can see the prototype of S5 snake robot prototype. So this is a continuum type of robot. So this state of art is based on terrestrial mobile robot. Then we have the spatial manipulator robot. Now, in spatial manipulator robot, here of the continuum one, we can see the elephant trunk. Okay, its shape is continuous. Its structure is, it's a hard robot with soft capabilities. Okay. Why do we call this as a hard robot? Because it has got, although the shape is like that of a trunk, but basically it is made of the different rings, and then it is actuated by wire. So it's a hard robot with soft capabilities on that, and actuation is a hybrid one. Okay, that is cable driven and pneumatic. Okay, so that is there. The degree of freedom per section is 2, number of sections are 4, and applications is in the grasping purpose. Okay, so number of section means you can assume that there are 4 compartments basically. That is what I mean by the number of sections. Then we have air octa robot, okay, again this one continuous robot, and this is the hard robot with again soft capabilities, hybrid, cable driven, and pneumatic. So both type of there. This is in the research stage. And then we have the discrete one, Bromi. It's a serpentine structure, intrinsic, electrically actuated. Okay, it's again at research stage. And then we have this one, again, a discrete one, serpentine, wire driven serpentine, extrinsic, that is cable driven. And again, this is in research stage. There are 16 number of sections on that, and degrees of freedom per sections are 4. Then spatial manipulator robot. Continuing with that, there is a what we have, the concentric tube, basically something like the antenna of your this thing, your car. Okay, in the car, antennas are there to carry FM. So that structure is basically the continuum tube type of structure. So something similar to that. That is one section goes inside of the other section. So the shape is continuous one, structure is soft, then it's intrinsic, and the actuation is the SMA actuation. I hope you may be knowing the shape memory alloys actuation that is there, and its application is in the robotic surgery. Then there is a Colobot robot, again continuous, soft, intrinsic, which is pneumatically actuated, again application in surgery. Then there is a robot Octopus, basically its shape looks like octopus. It's a continuous one, soft manipulator, SMA actuated, and being used as the underwater robot. And the Festo, basically this one, which I'm going to talk today, the continuous one, it's soft manipulator, pneumatically actuated. In this case, there are two sections basically, pneumatically actuated, and this is again, oh sorry, there are three sections in this one, but the example which I will be discussing that has got two sections, and it's again at the research stage. Then we have example for mobile manipulator robot. That is, you have mobile also and manipulator also. All right. So mobile manipulator means there is a motion to the base, what we call it as the mobile, making the robot mobile, and there is the manipulation capability in it. Okay. So we call it as the mobile manipulator. So in industrial robot, basically, if your base has got the motion, so if there is an additional extra axis on which the base itself can move, this fall under that category. Or we have the space robot, or we have agriculture robot, or large scale pipe manipulator like this, or one used in a hazardous application, say disposal of bombs like this, or the one which is can be used in the rescue robotics like this. And another one here, previous one where the heart shape, here with continuous shape of soft structure, intrinsic one for grasping, say Octoarm robot, this one, or CBHA, Robotino XT.
चाहे कोई भी हो, कभी भी किसी से जीत कर या उन्हें हराकर नहीं निभाया जाता। कभी-कभी झुकना भी होता है।
Hello. Can I continue?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, some additional voice is coming. So, okay. So we can see the continuous robot, which is a soft structure, intrinsic. So here, this is pneumatically actuated, and I'm going to discuss much more detail this one. Okay, which is a mobile manipulator. Then you have OC robotics one. This one, discrete, hard, extrinsic, that is cable driven for exploration purpose. Then elephant trunk like robot. This one, discrete, hard, intrinsic, and one used for the research work. Now, the question is that how do we model such type of robots, the continuous one, which I just talked about. Okay, so the modeling method for these are approach. One of the approach is the constant curvature robot. Okay, that is when the arm deforms, or a section of the robot deforms, we assume that it has got a constant curvature. Okay, so based on this approach, there are modified dynamic Hartenberg formulation. People have attempted on that. Then there are exact geometric model. Again, people have attempted on that. Esconde et al. She's my student actually. So she approached that approach. Then we have another one, the curve parameterization or exponential coordinates. These are the different type of approaches. So this is the bionic robot which I wanted to talk today. Okay, this robot is called the Robotino XT, and this is composed of a mobile robot. This base is mobile. Okay, you have the 3 Omni wheels on the base here, and you have the bionic section here. Okay, so basically here there are 3 tubes. Here you can see 3 tubes. Basically, these are not 3; these are 6. Okay, because there are 2 parts in each tube here. So first segment, second segment, first segment, second, first segment, second segment, something like this. Okay, so the bionic manipulator is decomposed in several parts, like as it is shown. Gripper is different. This is basically for the rotation of end effector, and this one is for the gripping of the object. So this is how it looks like. If you could see video. Are you able to see the video?
Yes, sir.
Okay, nice. Okay, so there could be 2 such one. In fact, they can cooperate also. In this one, you are seeing the tubings. This tube which you are seeing, basically, these tube are used to pneumatically actuate it, the different sections. Okay, so you can see these tubes basically. Okay, so there is a compressor inside this mobile robot. Okay, and there are valves through which the air is allowed to enter into the different sections. Okay, so for example, these 2 tubes are for the rotation of this gripper. Okay, so likewise, the different sections are there, and here you can see something shining basically. So here is the wire basically. So these are the potentiometer which I talk to you for measuring of the length basically. So the length of robot, one can find out the length of the different section with the help of these potentiometers. Okay, so I think, yes. So here, this is the actually CAD model. You can see inside, these are the Omni wheels basically. And these are the different walls basically, okay? And you can see different piping, and these pipe actually comes for the actuation of the different section. You can see here there is a fine half cut. So this is basically this tube and this tube. They are the different one. Okay, so they are sorry. So they are actuated differently. And if you want to see how inside it is, okay, so inside the structure that can be seen with the help of this animation. This is how they deform, and see the 3 Omni wheels here for the mobile manipulator motion. And yeah, the description of different components. And this is how these sections are basically. This is the shape of the tube here, you can see. Okay, the shape of the tube you can see from here. And these are the tubes basically which carry air for the actuation. Fine, I think I have to be a bit quicker. So this thing, okay, you may ask, why did we study this system, or why are we studying? In fact, one of my PhD student is currently working on this one. And we studied this system because currently you can see that this is actuated with the help of a joystick here, okay? But we wanted to have a closed loop controller for this one, okay? And for that, we needed to study the dynamics of this manipulator so that we can design a closed loop controller, okay? So for that purpose, we are studying this manipulator. So next, as I said, I'll be talking a little more about this one. So the forward kinematic modeling, robot description, modeling method, independent transformation, specific transformation, orientation, and experimental validation. So some of these things I'll be talking. This robot is named as Robotino XT, and it's a omnidirectional mobile platform, which is a Robotino. The mobile robot that comes separately, which is called as Robotino, and the bionic one, which is put into that. The bionic one is called actually Compact Bionic Handling Assistance, or CBHA. Okay, it's a hyper redundant continuous robot. There are 2 sections with 3 tubes per section. Okay, 1 rotation part, 1 compliant gripper, pneumatic actuation. There is limited extension. What does it mean? That you cannot increase the length. Okay, whatever you have to do, that you can do with the help of actuation, or rather deformation of the length. Okay, so there is a limited extension, and the trunk is a succession of polyamide based backbone where their deformation depends on the material flexibility. So if you are modeling, as I gave you a little hint about that, we model them as a constant curvature section. Okay, so the curvature of the robot tube is a perfect arc of circle, which is centered at say RJ00. RJ is the radius of that particular section, and the form of trunk is modeled as two cylinders with diameter of their bases, and the tubes are assumed to be parallel, and the mobility of the rotation part has not been considered in this modeling. So here we can look at the forward kinematic model for this. Okay, so as I said, these are the two sections. Although these are part of the frustum of a cone, basically, you can see that they are reducing gradually. But to simplify our analysis, we assume that this part has got a diameter D1 and this part has got a diameter D2. And as I was telling you, there are potentiometers to measure the length. So say this potentiometer has got a length L1. In the back, there is another tube is there. So that has got a length L2. And this one has got L3. So here L4, L5, and L6. So for the forward kinematics, in this case is that if you are given these tube length, okay, what are your position and orientation of the tip, basically? That is the forward kinematic problem in this case. So we assign a coordinate system at the origin and then coordinate system at the base of the first section, second section, and here for the gripper, rotational degrees of freedom of gripper, and then finally a coordinate system at the tip. So as I said, what we have is basically we have the tube length, that is L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6. These are the tube length. As I said, there are 6 tubes. Okay, L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6. So these are the tube lengths. So you can see the tubes here as I was showing you. This is L1, L2 is there in the back, L3 is this one. This is L4, L5 again is in the back, and this is L6. So the question is that if I'm given these tube length L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6, the forward kinematic problem is that what is my tip position X, Y, Z, and what is my tip orientation, that is phi, theta, psi. So the 3 Cartesian position and the 3 orientation, that is finding out that for the given tip length, given section length L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6. So this is the forward kinematic transformation. Okay, now how this is done is basically it is done in this way. If you are given these tube lengths, okay, the 6 tube length, then first what we do is that we find out the arc parameter. Okay, that is, we find out the radius of the 2 sections here, R1, R2, and then again the orientation of these 2 sections, basically, which is measured with the help of angle phi and theta for the first section, phi 1, theta 1 for the first section, and phi 2, theta 2 for the second section. So for the given these tube lengths, we find out these values, and once we know these arc parameter, then from arc parameter we can find out the X, Y, Z and phi, theta, psi of the robot. So this transformation, what we call it as the independent transformation, whereas this transformation we name it as the specific transformation. And this space, what we call it as the configuration space. Tube lengths, where we are finding these values put together, stacked together, we call it as the tube space. And of course, the final position and orientation of the gripper, that is what we call it as the workspace. So assumptions, as I said, we assume that the curvature of the tube is a perfect arc of circle centered at this one. We have already assumed this. This assumption is considered when there is no load on the gripper. Okay, and the gravity effect is neglected. and tubes are parallel and the diameter are constant. So we are assuming these, we are taking these assumptions basically, and these assumptions are very important, all right, to understand the formulation. That is, there is no load on the gripper. Gravity effect, as I said in the beginning, because of the gravity loading, the tubes will deform. So we are not considering that effect on that. Okay, and we are also assuming that these tubes are parallel and their diameters are constant. We are not taking them as a frustum of cone, rather we are assuming that they are the cylinders. Okay, so with these assumptions, we can write, say, Kj as 1 by Rj and theta j. This is nothing but definition of the curvature is equal to 1 by the radius of curvature, and this theta is basically that section included angle is basically this curvature into the length. So this equation has come actually from our basic geometrical equation which we studied in our high school. That is, the arc length is equal to the radius of arc into the included angle. That is, S is equal to R theta. So basically, this is the same equation. If you put Kj is 1 by Rj, so this is the arc basically, the S. So you will have the R into theta. Okay. This is there. Fine. Here, as I said, Rj is the radius of curvature of the section. J, theta j is the curvature of the angle at the section J, and Lj is the arc length of the section J. Okay. Now, when differential pressures are applied to the tubes of a section, this causes a deformation on the tube, and that ends no longer remain parallel. So this is what is going to happen when this is subjected to the differential pressure. So the forward kinematics, as I was telling you, that the forward kinematics we try to find out for the given length, for the given lengths here of the sections, what are my x, y, z coordinate. So here you can see that I have got an origin here. I just put it at a certain height so that this becomes parallel to this one. So I take it another frame here, and that is at certain orientation with respect to this one. Then there is a linear translation of that this frame, so we reach up to here. Okay, so this is my origin frame, and this is my, say, 0th frame. Okay, and this is my first frame. All right, so when I'm talking about where my frame 4 is located with respect to origin, that is the transformation matrix from 4 to origin. This is basically that we can do 4 description with respect to 3, then 3 description with respect to 2, and then 2 description with respect to 1, and 1 description with respect to 0, and 0 description with respect to origin. So if we can find out these transformation, we can find out the tip position with respect to the origin. Okay, and here you see moving from origin to frame 1. Okay, that is 1 to 0 and 0 to origin. It has just got a rotation of delta by the y-axis, and there is a translation of delta L. Okay, so this transformation matrix can be written like this, where this section represents the rotation about this y-axis, and these are the translation. Then we try to find out arc parameters to the position and orientation. Okay, that is, we try to find out from arc parameter to the tip position and orientation, which we call it as the independent transformation. Okay, so it's a very simple actually to understand this. Suppose this is my tube, one tube, and say this is the section of the tube, and it has got an arc, say R, okay, and say this angle is theta, and this length is say L, arc length. Okay, so I can find out this tip position. Okay, so what is this position is going to be? This is R, so this is also going to be R because the center is here, and this is R cos theta, the cos component, and this is R sin theta. So basically the tip position, if I talk about, so this is R. Okay, this R I can subtract R cos theta, so R minus R cos theta is the X position here, and Y, of course, here we are taking out of the plane, so that is 0, and Z is simply the R sin theta. So this is the position of this tip. All right, so this is done. Then we take a rotation about Y axis here by say an angle phi. All right, so this rotation can be written by this theta, this theta is about phi. This theta is about phi because this is the axis here. So this Y rotation of theta, if I just want to represent orientation, this is going to be my matrix, and then I give a rotation about Z axis by this angle phi. So for that, this is going to be the orientation matrix, rotation about Z axis. Those who are aware about CAD in the computer design or computer graphics, these type of transformations are very common. So basically, this transformation can be given by like this, that is the multiplication of these two matrices, that it represents rotation about y-axis by theta, and here are the translations, and here rotation about z-axis by phi. Okay, so the and translation in that case is 0, so here you have 0, 1. So if we multiply these two matrices, this is what we get. All right, so here this is what we get. So here basically we are getting the position and orientation of the tip if we know the angle phi and theta and r. All right, so this is there. Now in above equation, the tip frame is aligned so that x points towards the center of the circle and z axis is tangent with the curvature. Now if I have to represent with respect to the base, where the tip is there with respect to base, naturally we have to bring back to the base frame. Okay, and if I bring back or express that with respect to the base frame, then we are going to have this transformation matrix is little modified over here, and we get this formulation. Then question comes, how do we get r and phi? Okay, because we are only given the link length, and this link length or the section length I have found out using the potentiometers. Okay, so I know this length L1, L2. The L1 is for the first section, say L2 is for the second section. So this again we can find out. We know X1, Y1 and Z1 here as calculated from theta and phi, and okay, so as calculated from theta and phi, and similarly x2, y2, z2 as calculated from theta and phi. So this transformation matrix is simply x1, y1, z1 for the first section, that is for 2 to 1, and for 3 to 2 you have x2, y2, z2, a transformation from 3 to 2. And from 3 to 4, it's very simple. 3 to 4 is very simple. Only a translation is there about, say, y about this z axis y. So you have 0, 0, 0 p here. So this way it is there. So we could find out all these terms. Then for tube length to arc parameter. Okay, so from tube length to finding out of tube length to arc parameter, what we can do is that as I said, we assume that these section deform as a part of circle. Okay, so we can take one such section, okay, like this with included angle theta here and r as this length, and say this length is d. So from here we can find out basically this theta into d as L2 minus L1 by this one and L3 minus L2 by this one. So this basically gives you the value of theta into d, where d is basically, if we assume that it's a triangular shape basically, so from one of the tip, the location of the CG of the triangle that we assume at d. Okay, so this is basically how do we express this, and this length we take as average of or summation of the three lengths L1 plus L2 plus L3 by 3. Okay, so here in all we can see that we can get the parameter for the given lengths L1, L2, L3, we can get the parameter theta and phi. So this is how we can evaluate the phi parameter, and here this way, and the r parameter basically are 1 by r is k, that we can get it here, where d is like this. Okay, so what that was for any section. So we can have for say section 1 theta 1 phi 1 theta 1 r1, and similarly for phi section 2 phi 2 theta 2 r2. And remember what we know only the length of the different tubes which we get from the potentiometer. So these if you know these length potentiometer reading, we could get these values. So what we have done basically, we wanted with respect to this tube lengths, we wanted XYZ phi theta psi. So what we done, we from these tube lengths we found out this arc parameter, and from arc parameter we find out this one. So I did actually in the reverse way here. That is from length we found out arc parameter, and for the given arc parameter we found out the XYZ here. Okay, now there are some positions which cannot be reached basically. Okay, these such type of positions are called singularities. Okay, so practically the straight posture of a section leads to singularity because of infinite curvature radius. Then three singularity configuration can be defined. The first bending section is only in straight posture, while the second bending section is curved, or the second bending section is only in straight posture while the first bending section is curved, or the two bending section are in the straight posture. So if any of the section become straight posture, okay, then naturally its radius of curvature is going to be infinity, and you are going to have the singular configuration. So what we did, we measured some of these parameters, say angle of inclination of base, dead length of the different sections, and the base to tip diameter of the different tubes, Okay, all these parameters were measured, and then we took the different potentiometer readings L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6 for the different positions, sets basically, or points P1, P2, P3, P4. So for say one configuration, one XYZ theta phi psi, we have this potentiometer reading. Another XYZ theta phi psi, we have this potentiometer reading, and so on. So that we did, and here basically the arrangement of the potentiometer and sensing cable and all is shown here. For the experimentation, you can see the tubes which are going used for the actuation purpose, and this is how these tubes are there. And to measure the Cartesian position, okay, Cartesian position, because we wanted to experimentally verify it. So what we did, we put two cameras. One camera you can see here in this location, and another camera in this location, so that we can capture all the three coordinates XYZ, all the three XYZ coordinates here. So that we did. And here are the 4 points which I talked, 1, 2, 3, 4, these were plotted. So this was our simulated trajectory from the kinematic equation which we derived, and this was the tip trajectory from the experimental one. Okay, so this is how it looked at. Then we took test bench, means this way actually things were not very accurate, as you can see from the shape of it. So a test bench was designed, basically. Test bench was designed, and in that test bench, what we did is basically here is the configuration. Here what we did, actually I'll explain you. Here what we did, this is my manipulator, bionic manipulator. Now for measuring of the tip positions, actually previously we used the camera. Okay, in this case what we did, that there is a KUKA robot, and KUKA robot tip positions can be measured with the help of console, of course. That is here you can measure these joint angles. Okay, so if you can measure the joint angles, you can find out what the tip positions are. So that value we got from this robot console reading. Okay, and then rest of the things were same. So this way we carried it out, making this frame same for both KUKA as well as for the bionic manipulator. Okay, and then some plots were carried out before calibration, after calibration, position from KUKA, so X, Y, Z coordinates, and the errors were plotted. All these things were done, and things were found to be pretty good. So I think we have time around 10. So within 5 minutes, I'll try to wind up. Then we can have 5 minutes of question and answer. So what model is, although very basic model, so basic model we proposed, and then we experimentally validated that. And the inverse kinematic problem could be here, that you have you are given the XYZ positions. You have to find out the length of these sections, basically. Okay, so that can be done. That is, you are given the XYZ position, and you have to find out the trunk posture L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6. So there were errors, as I said, in our calculation, and these errors were because of the assumptions which we made. The curvature form of the trunk is different to a perfect arc of circle. Then the form of trunk is actually a cone and not a cylinder. I kept on talking about this. If anyone is interested, one can assume the cone shape, of course, but calculations are going to be a little difficult. The characteristic of the polyamide material of the robot is not well known. Pneumatic actuators are known to be not accurate in positioning tasks. Variables of configuration space are coupled, and extension gives a larger space. So we assume that sections are not going to extend, but actually they do extend by some amount, and that gives a larger workspace. Then we carried out a work on two such robots cooperating together. So I'll be quickly just demonstrating these things. These works were carried out in the France. So these two robots cooperating together here like this. So you can see there is considerable amount of slip. We have assumed that there is no motion to the base. Base were not given the motion, but the two robots were cooperatively handling the object. Okay, so here we were just trying to see the different type of motion. Yeah. So then, as I said, our aim of study was to create a dynamic model for this. So we are currently working on, or it's almost complete. Our result is at the communication stage. So we have worked on the dynamic model of it by defining the kinematics, and then after kinematics, we define the bond graph again for the cooperative behavior. This one, this is the bond graph model for this, and some of the simulated results were there. These were the initial conditions and simulated results for the tip. Then one of my other student is working on a hyper redundant snake type of robot. Okay, again, this is a bionic one. Here what we have done is that we have developed this type of robot. There are different type of snake motion actually. If one observed carefully, they are called concertina, serpentine, side winding, and caterpillar type of motion. Okay, so this is how the side winding is there. Okay, and this is side winding or rolling motions are there. Okay, and this is the caterpillar type of motion for the snake. So we try to work on this is the rectilinear motion. So we tried to work on this one with the help of hard robots. These are not soft robot actually. You can see the simple motor being joints. There are large degrees of freedom, or what we call it as the redundant robot. So this is the different type of gait, lateral undulation, side winding, and this is for the caterpillar type of motion. Okay, so this is there. So with this, we are currently working on the bionic version of this, and that bionic version, one of our student is working, and we have developed a novel actuator for this, and that is in the state of filing a patent that is there. So with this, I would like to thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer that.
Thank you, sir, for your extremely enlightening presentation. I'm sure that all the participants would have gained a lot by your presentation. If anybody has any questions or any queries, then I think sir would be happy to take it. Anyone? But I don't think anybody has any questions to ask.
Yeah, thank you. If anyone has any queries and if they can think of it, then they can contact me through email, communicate with me. I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
When does your next session start?
So the next session will start at 12 noon.
Well,
Okay. So thank you, sir. Thank you for joining and coordinating the session. With your kind permission, may I conclude the session, sir?
yeah, please do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I request all to join the next session at 12 noon. Thank you. Thank you for joining this session.
Thank you.